Hello, welcome to this very special In Conversation with the creators of All of This Unreal Time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Laura Barton. Before we begin, we have a couple of parish notices. So you will be able to ask your own questions to our guests this evening. You can do this, some of you have done it already, you can do this by visiting www.mif.co.uk/Q&A. That's www.mif.co.uk/Q&A. The other thing I need to tell you is that some of our guests are going to be joining us via video link, and there is a little bit of a glitch in the connection. So we're hoping they'll stay with us. If they don't, we'll try and get them back as soon as we possibly can. So in the studio, I am joined by the award-winning writer, Max Porter, author of Grief is a Thing with Feathers and Lanny, who is longlisted for the Booker Prize. Multi-talented director, Aoife McArdle, one of the world's leading music, video and commercial directors. She's worked with artists such as Coldplay, Brian Ferry and U2. She's also at work on her first feature film. And composer and electronic musician John Hopkins, who has received widespread acclaim for his solo and collaborative work, as well as Grammy, Mercury and Ivor Novello nominations. Joining us virtually are brothers Bryce Dessner and Aaron Dessner, known for their Grammy-winning work with the National, as well as independently as composers and producers. And actor Cillian Murphy, one of the most acclaimed and versatile actors of his generation, perhaps best known for starring in Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later and the hit BBC series Peaky Blinders. So this is quite a collision of talent, I would say, but it began quite simply, didn't it, Max, with a gift from you to Cillian. Is that right?
Yeah, it began even more simply than that, really, in as much as we just had conversations about things which were interesting us or worrying us. We'd agreed we wanted to make some more work, and one of the first things we decided was that if we built a thing, we would certainly want to keep on adding collaborators to it. So we thought, let's start with some text. I'll send it to you, let me know what you think, then let's share it with people that we'd love to work with and see if it can gather different types of energy as it keeps on growing in different directions with different art forms and different people that have skill sets different to our own.
And that piece of writing, though, these conversations grew out of the stage adaptation of Grief.
That's where we first met, on the stage adaptation of Grief is a Thing with Feathers. I would say that watching Cillian do that and having the work adapted onto the stage or translated onto the stage was a fairly profound experience for me. I really learned a lot about my work and my thinking about the relationship between reader and text, and therefore audience and stage. And I knew that I wanted to keep on sort of digging into that idea of performance and confession, and I thought maybe you could kind of create a hybrid form which would be somewhere in between a poem, a written piece, an essay, and the performance on stage, a dramatic monologue. And Cillian said, well, let's try that. Let's see what, we're both interested in work that doesn't necessarily belong in the neat boxes of our day jobs. It's not necessarily a narrative film, it's not necessarily a TV show or a stage or a poem or a novel, we were trying to create something that felt true to itself in between all those different forms.
Cillian, when you first received this gift, this continuation of a conversation, how did it resonate with you, and why did you alight on film and not the stage play idea?
Well, it was a gift, I remember reading it for the first time and I was really profoundly moved by it, and I could see that it was a kind of a distillation of all the conversations. But I never expected it to be that powerful, really. And we I don't know how long we had it. We just talked about it for a long time, and I had just finished doing the stage production of Grief is a Thing with Feathers, so I had fallen out of love with theatre because I was so exhausted and I had no inclination to go back on stage. So I then shared it with a friend of mine, Mary Hickson, who is a fantastic producer and who many people here on the panel will know and love. And she then kind of gave life to it. And we brought it to Aoife, And then Manchester came aboard, and then we brought it to John and Aaron and Bryce, and it sort of snowballed, you know. It happened very, very quickly.
John, I'm quite intrigued by the fact that music was such an integral part of the project from the beginning. I know that Mary and Cillian sent it to you very early on. How did you think you could respond to it musically?
I think when I was first sent it, I thought, I have no idea, because I tend to respond to visual things, or like perhaps hearing Cillian read it would have brought it to life, but the way it ended up happening as a film, and me also getting to work with Aaron and Bryce meant there was a lot of stuff to start with, and there was already this amazing performance to work with, and so I ended up more in my comfort zone than I thought I'd be. But yeah, it was a good, I think it was like November 2019 I first read it, and yeah, seeing it tonight was an extraordinary thing, really.
So tonight we have a live studio audience. You've seen it in situ for the first time in what used to be GMX. There's a light installation, your music looping before the performance. How did that feel when you walked into the room?
Well, you know, it's a very surreal time to be making music that gets played in front of anyone. So I mean, I made all that stuff that happens before the film in my studio, which is, you know, just a room in London, and suddenly it's, you know, I'm here and it's playing in this vast, incredible building out of all these speakers, and you know, it feels like a real privilege, really.
And even more than that, I guess for all of you, maybe for Bryce or Erin could answer this, but this was a project that was meant to be done in real life, in real time, but in the event you've done it all scattered around the globe pretty much, apart from when a few of you met for the actual filming. How has that affected the way that you have worked?
It's Laura. I would say that you can all hear me from here, yeah?
We can.
That we had planned to spend time together, and so it was, you know, of a collaboration like this where we're really encountering artists from different mediums and fields. Like, it was, you know, people that we've met before, but it would have been really advantageous to spend time together. But actually, for the nature of Max's work, it felt actually kind of serendipitous that we ended up in this very fractured, you know, in a way kind of problematic process where we were exchanging and kind of rehashing each other's ideas and finding a way to, you know, it felt very kind of modern in a way where, you know, where we were forced into kind of a new type of work. And I think that that sort of struggle to find our way shows itself in the final piece, which Aoife put together so beautifully. That yes, I think it, you know, like anything during these times, nothing is normal, and we tend to thrive on that, actually. And Mary Hickson tends to thrive on throwing us into situations which are potentially uncomfortable, but it was a beautiful kind of end result. You know, it was a new process, unlike anything that we've done before.
Thank you. Aoife, when you came on board, it's quite easy to see that there's rather a lot of men on this project, and it's a piece of writing that I'm sure that there's a lot of things for everybody to apologise for and to regret and have remorse about or to consider, but there seems to be an awful lot of white male reckoning at the moment. How did you, as a female, not to say like a female director, but how did you as a woman on the project navigate that?
I mean, I think it's already a subject that I find quite fascinating, you know, and something that we're all thinking about at the moment, you know, via all our male relationships and, you know, the media, something we're all talking about. I loved how confessional and honest it was. I think I just felt like it was such a great time for a piece like that to be written. So it really resonated with a lot of things I was thinking about, and I liked the idea of also how I could bring layers to that as a female as well, and how I could, you know, look at it from my angle and also like add ideas and visually and sonically that would like elucidate the meaning that's already in there, that's so rich, but also like contrast it in ways and, you know, make people think about masculinity from a feminine point of view as well. So yeah, there was a lot of that in the building of the world that you see on the screen, I think. as well. Yeah.
How did you build that world?
Started, I mean, once as soon as I read it, I was like really moved by it, and I thought it was so poetic and beautiful. And the first thing I suppose in my process is that, you know, I make a treatment, and I like, you know, when I read something, it's like all the images that are going to come into my head, the sounds, and then it's like building that into you know, a journey that you already feel in the writing. That's, you know, both an internal and an external journey. And it felt like night to day to me in many ways. You know, it feels like this man is walking through this sort of fire of guilt and shame, but then he comes out in this sort of catharsis. And so it's sort of making a journey where you really felt like the character was earning that catharsis as well was a really important aspect of it. So, you know, that meant it took in all these industrial locations and grittier places, but then it also took in, you know, fringe nature that we sometimes don't appreciate, you know, and yeah, just finding those locations and trying to find the most unique places that would paint that picture, I guess. Yeah.
Max, was there a sort of sense of laying down when you wrote the piece and also when you saw the finished work?
I think the thing about the piece is that the meaning is, there's a great deal of ambivalence in the piece, and meaning is unfixed, and it's this person who could be any person. Taking an idea for a walk, and sometimes there's a great deal of specificity. He's white, he's Western, he's male, and other times there's a kind of philosophical abstraction at work, and I try and get that in the energy of the line in the different types of writing. So when other people come on board, it's a total, well, it's humbling, to be honest, and thrilling and interesting and exciting to me that as each person came on board, right the way through to the technicians installing the piece, in the ambience of the space, and right the way through, I hope that the audience's encounter with it as they go off into their own lives and carry on thinking about it, that meaning keeps on changing and being fixed. So my first, to go to the earliest point in the chronology of sort of sharing it beyond Cillian and I's conversation with Mary and then Aoife, was that Aoife had, I think, is a very poetic filmmaker, and had sort of felt, why just illustrate a text when you could expand, interrogate, undermine it, turn it on its head, let it speak to itself, across itself. You know, that kind of patterning is a very literary way of making a film. And then I think the way that the musicians have added to it, that they're, you know, giving each other a section. I'll let them speak about that. But the idea that they're in dialogue with each other as they bring music to the work just keeps my intention unfixed, which is the greatest thing a writer could possibly have. Is their ideas going off for a walk in multiple different directions.
That's beautiful. Erin, perhaps you could speak about that. The fact that you were each given, the three musicians were given a segment of music, of the film to score. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it was something we talked about initially, dividing it essentially into chapters where I took the beginning and Bryce took the middle and John took the end, but actually it didn't stay that way at all. It was sort of our initial approach, just to not have any preconceptions, or we never talked about key, or really, other than, I think we had some general conversations about how the text moved us, and sort of like implied rhythm in Cillian's voice and his diction, and that we wanted to bring that out. But it was really interesting, because we just divided it into sections and generated a lot of raw material and then exchanged them, and there was actually, you know, multiple phases of that. So that's not where we ended up. Ultimately it changed quite a bit from our first ideas to the end, but it was nice to have a project where there was really it was very open in that sense.
In what way did it change?
I think that in the beginning, there was more of a, not to say lighter mood to what we were doing, but we were imagining actually being able to perform some of this music, because originally that was the intent, was to get together and actually play, you know, live score the film in a room, and that obviously couldn't happen because of COVID, and in that sense some of the ideas changed and maybe took on a darker hue. I also think we started to process each other's ideas. So John for example, I would make a pulse that you hear towards the beginning of the film that John took and processed and sort of changed. And that was some of the real collaboration happened that way, where we were manipulating each other's ideas.
And Cillian, were you keenly aware of all these different rhythms of different musicians, of Max's writing, of Aoife's style of filmmaking when you were performing, or were you inhabiting your own rhythm completely?
Well, I've spoken about this before. I think certainly when we were making the piece, when we were actually shooting the piece, Aoife has an amazing ear for music and understanding of music, and as does Mary Hickson, as does Max Porter, and I think when you have something that is akin to a monologue, you really have to lean into the musicality of it. You spend the time preparing and working out what you think might be something to do with the meaning or what you're trying to say here. But I agree with Max. I'm very a big fan of ambiguity and ambivalence. But anyway, you do all that work, and then when you get down to it, it has to be about rhythm and musicality. So we spent a lot of time, myself and Max, just trying to find that sort of internal rhythm to the piece. And then in terms of the score, I mean, I'm just a fan. I'm just a fan of these guys. I'm a fan of the National. I'm a fan of Aaron and Bryce, the music they do, the amazing collaborations they do. I'm a fan of John Hopkins, have been for years. So the idea that these guys were then going to take what we made, on the streets of London and put a score to it was just so exciting. It always is for me as a performer when you make something and then you pass it on to the next stage of collaboration where it's these extraordinary musicians and they make something to, that comments on that. So I suppose what I'm trying to say, everybody on it was a music lover or nerd or musician. Some way.
All of you are all working on a vast array of other projects throughout this, or have been this last year. I'm wondering what space this particular project has offered to you and what it's brought to your other work. I'm going to throw that open and anybody can leap in. Don't all leap at once, obviously, but you can leap when you're ready. John, you've been working, I'm not going to say what you've been working on, but you've been working on various things. Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, I've been just writing, primarily I'm a solo artist, and that's why this has been so refreshing, because I'm a fan of everyone involved as well, and I've worked with Aoife before. Actually, she directed a video for me years ago, which was arguably the best one I've had still to this day. And but yeah, just to step out of that vacuum of only making stuff to your own kind of requirements, your own standards, your own emotional levels. It's like I really respond well to feedback and to having things to bounce off. And usually I have to do all of that myself. And so this was, very refreshing. And I've been working on a solo album, which is very, very different in style. But just to stop and turn my mind to something completely different was really helpful in that process as well. And this is, there's an intensity and a darkness to this, which is not present in a lot of stuff I write. So it felt like it was pushing at my range a bit, which I always like. And I haven't scored a film for, I think, since 2013. So this is the first thing I've done to picture in that time, and it's made me want to go back in that area a little bit.
And Aoife, you've been working on various things.
Yeah.
This seems like a sort of between space for a lot of your projects.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it did feel like, very sort of pure, this one, in comparison to other things. I think because the whole project, the mindset behind it and the idea of collaboration behind it just made it, quite a liberating experience in a lot of ways. Everyone was kind of brought to the table to bring, what they do to it and to bring their kind of unique point of view to it and their creativity to it. So, it was very, very inspiring way to work. So, not that every other job you do isn't. It's just that, you sometimes don't do a job that's purely just, in a way, just creativity for creativity's sake. And I think that was what was really, overall really rewarding about this one,
And particularly, I guess, for all of you, quite surreal in what has been an extraordinarily surreal year. Was it a hopeful project? Was it a nourishing project, Max, maybe?
I think I mean, we felt Manchester have supported us, and we felt very cared for. And Mary is a person who, in collaboration with Manchester, has guided us and allowed us to be incredibly ambitious about the tone and the meaning of the work. You know, she's always said expand and grow and build and work. But also for all of us, viewers and team and everybody, this is such a strange time. And what you lose in the ability to travel and work in person with people, and, you know, even to see loved ones who live in different places and everything, you gain in these strange pockets of intimacy that are now available to us using the technology we have. So I've found that all the projects I've worked on this year have all kind of throbbed or gravitated around this one, because this one has been the one where people have so effortlessly pivoted, like, okay, we can't do that, we'll do this. And we can't actually get the brothers over, so let's score it slightly differently and think about a life, you know, just keeping things. I suppose there's a commitment to making interesting work that I have felt has given me kind of faith beyond this, that we believe in culture. We really definitely believe in collaboration across different art forms, across different medium, and sometimes you're lucky enough to find a festival that share that faith and have the means to make it happen. And so it's given me a sort of spring in my step when other things haven't worked, or wondering, are we ever going to see each other again? It's like, we can see each other, we're here together in some form, in some quite interesting form. So yeah, I have great love in my heart for the light that this project has shone on other things.
Well, that seems a splendid moment to move to the audience questions. There are a lot of them. Oh, Aoife, this is from an anonymous contributor. Really enjoyed every element, beautiful words and sound. Aoife, how did it feel to ask Cillian Murphy to lie in a puddle?
Great. Yeah, I mean, well, it was something it was part of the treatment, actually, that idea at one point. And I had this image of this guy lying down, and obviously I'd thought of that image when I read Max's words, and it's sort of like a film death in a way, that moment. It just felt like it matched the words at that point. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty intense rain we had that night, so it was definitely not the most fun thing to do for an actor.
We should ask Cillian.
And we actually had to do it twice when I promised Cillian we'd only do it once, which was
I did
fantastic.
wonder watching Cillian.
Yeah, we had a technical fault in the rain and the camera stopped working. So then I had to ask him to do it again, which was brilliant. But he
Cillian,
just
did you believe
pro,
her
so he just went for it, and I love that moment. I think it's one of my favourite moments in the film. Yeah.
Cillian, did you believe her when she said the camera had broken?
I had totally forgotten that, actually, Nancy.
Yeah. You had to do it twice.
I remember seeing that image in treatment also, and I thought it was really graphically beautiful, and I seem to remember it was the last shot we did on the whole shoot, if I'm correct.
Definitely.
And everyone was like, worn out and tired and had given loads, and then I remember Aoife saying, let's just get this let's get that image that we liked, and we did it. And I also love it, the way Aoife's cut it to the text. It's quite powerful. And the thing about, I don't know, a human being lying down in the road, it's very arresting and strange, so it just works.
Would you say you had a sense of humour failure about the lying down in the road?
I'm thankful it was the last shot.
Max, this one's for you. What does it feel like when you first hear the words you've written spoken by somebody else?
Well, what I'm discovering is that it is very interesting to hear your work read back to you. It exists completely differently, right from the intonation and the syntax and the emotional energy invested in the words. It's profoundly different from how you heard it in your head or how it sounds in your own nasal, disappointingly English accent. And that's the nice thing about working with Cillian, is that he is, he has an incredibly beautiful voice and is an incredible performer and a patient, intelligent performer. He wants to know what the words mean, and therefore for me to be asked, what does this mean? Right down into the specifics of the ideas and the abstract and the philosophy and the politics behind it, and then to say, well, can we, in this instance, can we change it? Can we make that he wants to rearrange things so that it feels more natural. He wants to sometimes change words so that it feels more true to his lived experience, or to an Irish boyhood, or and then we changed it right the way through. Aoife was making suggestions about the text and the rhythm with her colleagues on some such on the shoot, and we're collaborating with Cillian to get the flow right, to get the energy right. And I'd say this sounds like I'm just saying this because it's in the nature of the project, in human beings' relationship to the world around them. But it's true that the weather was even involved. There were these extraordinary moments at 3 a.m. when the weather was so intense we decided to just hurry it along, or push it back, or hold it back, or invest the things with these silents. And the way that the musicians have then taken that and responded to it electronically with different types of noises means that what is the voice? Is it my voice? Is it their voice? Is it all of our voice now? This thing has a voice of its own that none of us can individually control. And I find that really profoundly interesting and good.
Me too. Having seen it, I think about 6 times now. And I do encourage everybody to watch it as many times as you possibly can, because with each new viewing, you gain a new layer of a new voice, really, for each viewing. What does the moth symbolise? Somebody would like to know. Is that giving the game away?
Yeah, well, no, I liked in that scene in the cafe, because it was one of the ideas when I read the monologue that I thought, one of the locations I saw, and it just felt like the moth. I liked the idea that at first you think it was a moth and then you realise it was a butterfly. So it was really sort of to go, as an idea, it was to sort of have like almost a premonition of the nature that you end up in, that you get, that the kind of reward you get at the end of the journey, I guess. But also just like, a tiny kind of glimmer of hope, or a glimmer of femininity in that very sort of hard masculine environment. So yeah, it sort of symbolises those things, I guess. But again, this is like, it should symbolise whatever it symbolises to the person watching. I think, the ambiguity is something that I really love to embrace as well. But that's what my feeling about it was, but I feel like when you watch it, it can mean many things, I think, yeah.
Somebody would like to know why it was shot in Barking and not Manchester. I think there's an angry mob outside.
We did think about Manchester a lot, actually, at one point. I think it was to do with, it was a combination of things. We looked at Dublin, Manchester, London. To be honest, because of COVID, it became like, where could we all get together? And, that was one of the reasons we ended up in London. But also I did feel like London is a place that has still got a lot of undiscovered beauty on the fringes, beyond the urban landscapes and industrial places. There are these really incredible little pockets of nature that you don't think about, or even just, the marshes with the train. That was something that I've always found really beautiful in London that I hadn't really seen in a work before. So I was thinking about things like that when I was reading Max's words. Those kind of images were coming in my head, and there just seemed to be more of them associated with Greater London than necessarily with other places. But that's just because I don't know Manchester well enough, probably, But, maybe we can do the next one in Manchester.
Exactly. Cillian, at the end, you look right at the camera, and it felt very special. Does that happen often?
Well, as an actor, you're sort of, you have to train yourself, or you learn never ever look in the lens. That's the whole thing. And it's so for me, it's very counterintuitive to whoever looked down the lens. But we talked about it, myself and Aoife, and it's a big move, when you look down the lens, because you look directly at the viewer, obviously. But Aoife had, designed it so that first we're behind this character, and then gradually you're sort of profile, and then you see a bit more of him, and then you move into towards dawn, and you begin to see a bit more, and then right at the end he looks down the lens, and I wasn't sure about it until I saw it, and then it worked so beautifully, and she was completely right. And I don't know what it is about looking down the lens. It's very arresting for the viewer, I suppose, but at that point in the film, or in the journey that he's on, it felt like he was sort of needed connection, you know. So I think that's probably why we did it. But you could probably elaborate on that a bit more. But that's why I think.
No, I mean, I think what you said is, it's one of those things, like it is a big move to look down the lens and like, but I felt like, given what we'd gone through on the journey, like that maybe by that point we would have earned it, you know. And I just felt like the words at that point, they're so, you know, they're so profound and so moving that you just, you want to feel that human connection at the end, and what better way than to look down the lens. But it's always a risk, you know, but like I'm glad that once I was putting it together in the edit, it just felt like the right move at that point then with Cillian, you know. And the way he's performed it as well, like because he's performed it in such a natural, very sort of human way, then he gets away with it, I think. Not everyone can, so yeah.
Absolutely. Bryce, Marina would like to know, how was the experience of working on a soundtrack different from the usual album-based work you do? You obviously work across both quite often.
I mean, I think that I have worked on lots of albums with Aaron, and then various scores. I think the collaborative nature of this, and also encountering artists that we hadn't worked with. I think that we were presented basically with what you saw without music, which is already really powerful on its own, actually. And I think that Max's words were really prescient. It was written before COVID, but then to be in this strange limbo that feels very much the product of centuries of man's misbehavior and the planet getting out of line with itself and destroying our environment and all these issues, and then to kind of have the weight of this text. I mean, actually at the time I was actually working on a piece inspired by T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, and it felt like Max kind of picks up from, which is written 100 years before, but kind of this piece picks up from that one in a way of kind of reckoning with where we are. And so it felt like weirdly kind of healing or something, like to kind of delve into it. I think, as Aaron mentioned, with John, we were just really kind of approaching each other at first, where we were trying to find our common ground, and we kind of started with a counterpoint. And also, just as opposed to an album you're making with our band or something where there's like 20 years of history, this was a new kind of, like, out of a lot of respect, and then respect for this piece of work we were engaging with. And I think that, again, the beauty of Cillian's performance and Max's words and Aoife's setting of this and image was that it is multi-layered with many interpretations. So we kind of provided this lighter score at first, which there are sort of like shimmers of it remaining in what you saw. It was quite interesting, the processes of how we got to the end, and I think the nature of the timing of it remained kind of like the paint is still drying, which is kind of like we were even tweaking things like 10 days ago or something. So it's beautiful to see how that came together.
Bryce, you actually touched on something there that maybe I could throw to Aaron, but somebody's asked here, I can't quite find the question actually, but how musicians and actors and writers and directors can help the destruction of the planet or help prevent it. It's a big question for Friday night, but I feel you can handle it.
That's a big question. I mean, I feel like it's one of the very visceral reactions I had to seeing the film before we put music to it. Was just the environment is so powerful, like and there's a lot of sound which is not our music in the actual piece, and it draws your attention to the text and this sort of, I don't know, I felt this both a very, almost at times like a pastoral. I think some of our initial musical ideas verged on the pastoral because we were responding to, especially at the end of the film when you're in nature finally. But as musicians, as anyone that works in entertainment or in art of any kind, I feel like you have a responsibility to express your feelings. I don't agree with people who say that musicians shouldn't be political or shouldn't say what they feel about important issues. And if you're not doing that, I kind of feel like you're just making French fries, or you're just, I don't know, doing something that's not engaging with the world that we're in right now, which is a profound crisis, and climate being one of the most profound issues. So I'm not sure that answers the question very well, but it's definitely on our mind as we work on this.
No, you did. Thank you. Max, what did you mean by sisterhood? Now that's a thing to envy.
Well, that is a point in the script where this idea of a man, this abstract template of modern man, drenched in all sorts of different types of embarrassment and shame, is feeling that he betrayed or was insignificant or insubstantial in his efforts towards the community of living things around him. And he perceives, I suppose from a sort of non-doctrinaire feminist point of view, that that is something that is done better by women, historically and in the present. That in female relationships you find less greed, less rapacious focus on the ego, less desire for profit, competition, self-aggrandizement, even violence. I can't speak for this character, but one of the things that I felt the piece gained this year in the pandemic, in a post-Trump, post-truth, what do we now call ourselves? The era of the Hancock butt grope. That the piece gained a certain bareness, a sort of naked appeal to male men. When given a microphone, will you stare down the lens and lie to a populace, to a nation, even to a world? Will you, despite us all knowing what the truth is, will you still cling to falsehood? And what would it mean if an elected politician of any gender in a democracy something like our own emerged and said, "I'm sorry, I got that wrong," or "I'm sorry, we were actually lying about that, and we are now going to begin the process of telling you the truth and redesigning our systems to allow a more truthful relationship between politics and the citizen." So I guess that's what he's saying, a little bit.
In a nugget. Thank you. Let me find something else for all of you. Which line, I'd like a couple of you to answer this, which line or lines of the monologue resonated the most with you as you first read the piece? Maybe Aoife, you could answer that.
When I first read it. Mm-hmm. It's the most obvious, but yeah, I came out here to apologise. I just find that, I guess that's what grabbed me first, definitely. I mean, there's so many lines in it that I, was really excited by, but I think just the nature of that, the boldness of it, and the fact that it was just making that kind of statement, and about this, person who's really come to a place in his life where he's looking back at all these things and thinking over his life, and even though it's very much like a male story in some ways, the universality of that was very appealing to me too, and just there's so many things that we all think about that we have to apologise about when it comes to the planet and all these things. So yeah, it just resonated with me a lot, that theme. Yeah.
How about you, Cillian?
There's a segment in there where our man talks about, raising children, and more specifically raising boys, and I am the father of boys, and as is Max, and I'm sure there are other people that have boys in the audience and on the panel. And, you know, that struck me a lot, and that played into my interpretation, I suppose, of the performance, and it was just the way the subtle, beautiful way that Max addressed that about the sort of how difficult it is raising boys now in the climate that we live in. And yeah, it just felt personally quite close to me. You know?
Thank you. This is apparently our last question, so I think this is a fitting one. Every day is a last day, as every day will always be, and it is more than enough. What would you do today if today was your last day? John?
I would attend this premiere.
Yes, correct.
And answer your questions.
Thank you very much.
That is a difficult one. I mean, I think make a lot of frantic phone calls. I don't know.
Yeah. Aoife, I'm going to ask all of you. Aoife?
Probably have some kind of party with all my friends and family that I haven't seen for a whole year. Yeah, like definitely looking forward to more human connection generally. Yeah, like I've been away for a year too, so a lot of this was remote. So yeah, that's what I would do if it was the last day. Yeah.
Erin?
I'd do the same thing I've been doing throughout the pandemic, just fall asleep with my children, where you're just kind of like, it's been so nice to not be going anywhere and just be at home. And I kind of sometimes wish time would stop anyways when you're just with your kids. So that's what I would do.
And how about you, Bryce?
Yeah, I think similar. I do that at night. I hold my son, and I feel this thing like very consciously kind of reassuring him, while at the same time knowing, I think like this piece that we've made, you know, there's a lot of problems and dangers and things we don't understand in the world, but there's also beauty. And I think that somehow that's sort of the feeling I often have with him, is sort of like reassuring him that there's beauty in the world. And yeah, that would probably be, you know, the thing I get to do every night, I guess, is the thing I would do. So it means I have a happy life, I guess.
That's lovely. Cillian?
Oh my God, I'm so shaky. Ask Max first to get that. I think it was. I don't actually think it's kind of about the last day. My interpretation was more that it's, you know, don't live. Every day could be your last day. Just put a bit more joy in your life. That's my interpretation of it. That's probably wrong, Max.
You can think what you want, man.
But you know, I don't see it as a sad thing. I see it. That's one of the last things he says in the movie. Perhaps it's the last, but I see it as like really hopeful. So I don't want to end on a depressing note. I think there's so much potential we have as humans. So let's use that. Yeah.
Thank you. And then lastly, Max, what would you do?
Well, you know, yeah, it does. I mean, like Cillian's saying, like it does refer to the age of extinctions and the literal ending of life, and that's why it's been. I did an event with a friend of mine who's a palliative care nurse recently, and this piece was humming in my mind as she was talking about the experience of caring for people in this thing, and breath and touch and eye contact and all the things that make us extraordinary as human beings in each other's company at the beginning of life and at the end of life. You know, coming in and leaving, which is what we all must do. So I think I'm the same as everyone else. I'd go for the really, what this thing's taught us, the great privilege of the ordinary. I'd probably cook a meal for my boys. If there's time for a walk in the woods, that would be great. I could do some tree worship, but ultimately I just want to be with the people I love and smelling human skin and hearing human voice, and that is enough.
That is indeed. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to the audience. Thank you to Max Porter, Aoife McArdle, John Hopkins, Cillian Murphy, Bryce Dessner, Erin Dessner, Mary Hickson, who isn't here with us, but I think is in spirit. And thank you so much to Manchester Festival for having us all here. Have a lovely evening.
Was I ever taught about exploitation, violence, the cost of mine and others' lifestyles, the true meaning of everything I buy and imbibe and watch sail by? And I see clearly two paths, one of which is sorry for all of this, and one of which is a tabletop of neatly wrapped stones, and on each stone is a false apology, and we can throw them at people like us and not risk any broken glass. None of this is my fault. I was never taught it, you see, and nor did I learn how to ask. You could drive yourself mad, going micro, staying local, saying sorry for every falling thing, letting the dark back in. None of this is anything to do with me. It's culture's deep. It's Dad's fault, back and back and back.